Yo, welcome to lesson 10. Today we are going to talk about another value type called list, which is known as a data structure that allows us to store 0 or more items of the same type. An easy way to think about this is to imagine a bag that holds numbers. At first, this bag has nothing inside it, so it is empty. And then we can add as many numbers as we want inside it. So now the bag has more than 1 items. And as a good practice, we should only put numbers inside this bag. If we start to mix things up, for example, if we put strings or booleans into the bag, it will make our lives much more harder than it should be. Imagine we have this toolbox here and I ask you to find a hammer. It won't be such an easy task. But instead, if I gave you this toolbox instead, where there's only hammers inside, it will take you less than a second to get me a hammer. So basically what I'm trying to say here is that organization is key to writing good code, so make sure that you only include one type inside a list. A cool thing about lists is that you're able to maintain the order in which items are added. If you're new to lists, the best way to work with it is to draw it on a piece of paper. So let me erase everything here. And basically what you want to do is just draw a long rectangle like this. Here we have one rectangle, so we can only have one item inside our list. If we want more items, all we have to do is just draw dividers. So for our example, let's draw 5 dividers. So now you can see that we have 6 boxes within this rectangle. So now let's add some numbers into it. So now we have a total of 6 numbers inside our list. So next what we want to do is label the positions of each item. One fun fact is that in programming, we generally count from 0. So we're going to count from 0 first. So let's label the first item 0. So if you want the first item in the list, all you have to do is grab the item from position 0, which is 7. Generally, we like to refer to the positions as an index. So let's label this index. So in this list, we have 6 items in total, 6 items. And in programming, we like to generalize the total number of items in a list with a variable. So let's denote that as n. So n will equal 6, which is the total number of items. And since we start counting from 0, the last item in this example would be 6, which is the total number of items, subtract by 1, which gives us 5, which is the last item here. And as you can imagine, there can be lists of different sizes. There could be one with 7, 8, 100, or even 1,000 items inside it. Hence why we use n to denote the total number of items. So now we can generalize getting the last index with n minus 1. And these are the basic concepts that you need to remember in order to work with lists. Cool, so now let's do some coding. So to create a list, all you need to do is use the square brackets. So let's open the square brackets. And on Replit, it auto-completes it, which is great. So now all we have to do is put the items that we want inside the list. And for each item, all we have to do is separate them with a comma. So now let's put some numbers. And that's how you create a list in Python. Next, what we want to do is put it inside a variable. So let's create a variable called numbers and set it to this list. So now we can do print numbers and click run. And now you'll see 5, 4, 9, 10, 12. And let's also do print type numbers to see what the type is. And as you can see, it is of type list. Cool, so now let's get the first item within our list. Let's erase this line. And to access the first item, all we have to do is use a square bracket after the variable. And then we tell it what index we want. So in this case, we want the first one, so we put 0. And now let's click run. And as you can see, we got 5. And now let's get the last item within the list. So let's copy this line and paste it here. So we have 5 items in total, so all we have to do is 5 and subtract 1 to get the last index. So let's run this, and as you can see, we got 12. So one common error that a lot of people run into is that they try to access an invalid index. So for example, let's remove the -1. So now we're asking for the index 5, but in our example, there is no item at index 5. So let's click run, and as you can see, we got an error saying list index out of range. So if you look in the drawing here, the valid indexes that we have are 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And when we tried to get the item at index 5, we got an error because 5 does not exist within this range. Therefore, we can generalize this to 0 less than equal to index less than equal 4. This means that for any index value that we provide, as long as it's greater than equal to 0 and less than equal to 4, it is a valid index and we can get a value for it. To generalize this for any list, all we have to do is remove the less than equal 4 and just put less than n, where n is the total number of items. And in this example, 5 is the total number of items. So that means any index less than 5 and greater than equal 0 will be a valid index. So in the previous example that we did, we used 5 minus 1. And this works well for this example, but in a real life situation where we can get lists of different sizes, we can't always just count how many items there are. So there is a method called len, L-E-N. So let me show you how to use it. First do print, and then type len, and then brackets. Inside the parentheses, you want to pass it the list that you want to use. So in our case, we want to use numbers. And now let's click run. And as you can see, it gave us 5. So now instead of putting 5 here, we can just use len numbers. So let's copy that and replace this. And now let's erase this line and click run. So now we got 5 and 12. So let me show you how powerful this is. So let's add some more items into our list. And now let's click run. Cool, as you can see, it always gives us the last index. And that's why it's important to use len instead of putting the value 5. This way we can change the list, and we will always be guaranteed to get the last index of the list. Cool, so before we end the lesson, let's do a quick recap. When you work with a list, try to draw a rectangle and separate each item with a divider. And then, on top of the rectangle, label the indexes for each item. And remember, we always start counting from 0. In programming, we use n to denote the total number of items, and we can get this value by using the function len and passing it the list. And finally, if you want to get an item inside the list, you have to use square brackets, and you have to provide it an index that is greater than equals 0 and less than n. Thanks for watching. I hope that you learned something new. Make sure to like and subscribe so that way you don't miss out on any new content.